I was a fatherless child, right? And it took certain men, certain dads who had other kids to adopt me.
I started Good Plus Foundation in 2001, just doing a drive to get baby gear and equipment to families in need. We'd noticed that over 60% of the families that we were serving were led by single moms. And that number just wouldn't budge year after year after year. And it just kept begging the question, where are the fathers? Because to really help mothers, you have to help fathers. We kept looking around for services for men. We almost couldn't believe that no one was doing this work. Why aren't we thinking about fathers as the missing link?
That's a big piece of the puzzle that seems more unsolved than solved.
The first line of defense is that they are, a deadbeat, or they just don't want to be there. And what we have found is that is completely untrue.
The deadbeat dad, to me, is the guy who just doesn't care about his kids. And then you have guys who don't have the resources and the opportunities to provide for their kids.
There's a lot of barriers when fathers are trying to connect with their kids. The child welfare system, it's set up where they scrutinize fathers tremendously.
There's a lot of challenges to being a father, especially if you're in the system.
Initially, everything was taken away from me. Legal custody, physical custody, all these different things, they just yanked right out.
A father who had done everything he was supposed to do. And because he didn't have a crib for his child to sleep in, a social worker wouldn't let him take the child home. But through our donation through Good Plus, we were able to provide this father with everything that the baby needed, so he was able to go pick up that child and bring him home. The goods and services from Good Plus help more than just the kids. It helps the father in his relationships with the mother who sees that father, her children participating and contributing. She's less likely to be a gatekeeper for the child.
Once they get these parenting skills, these healthy relationship skills, they're building on that. So you could see the difference.
A few months ago, we had a dad. He had nothing for his family. He felt like there was no hope. And getting the support from the other dads was something that definitely changed his life.
When we would give them diapers and we would give them ultimately strollers and cribs and all the things that make it possible for a father to create a safe home, things start to really change. They're looking up at a bigger, brighter future than they ever could have imagined for themselves.
Good Plus has been very helpful. I didn't have anything, and I had to rebuild everything. So I've received diapers, I've received toys for the children.
You can see quick, big changes in two people's lives, the kid and the dad. Fast, all of a sudden, they both light up, that they made this connection, and you see it. And it's the most beautiful thing to see.
When fathers do better, children do better. And when children and fathers do better, families do better. I think it'll have a great impact on the decrease of poverty across the country.
I think the best part of being a father is seeing your kid accomplish things. You don't have to do much, you just gotta be there. You gotta be around.
It's just been a beautiful thing. I have the girls coming back home, and I couldn't be happier.
Once you've seen the magic that happens when a child becomes engaged with their father and what that does for our society, you can't go back.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Aspen Ideas Festival. Good Plus presentation. To paraphrase John F. Kennedy, I am the man who accompanied Jessica Seinfeld to the Aspen Ideas Festival. It's such a beautiful place here, and you look at these trees, and I was thinking about what we're doing here, not just this, but this entire event. And to me, one of the most beautiful things is when a flower starts to bloom or when a baby starts to grow. And those are beautiful natural things, but when an idea also starts to bloom, it's just as beautiful as those natural things. And that's what I have had the incredible opportunity to watch happen with my wife, who she'll tell you the incredible story of it, but we were on the West Side Highway driving down from the George Washington Bridge, and we had just had a baby, and you go through a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff you use, and a lot of stuff just sits there, and we're thinking, well, there's so many people right around us that could really use this stuff we don't use anymore. I wonder how we could get it to them. And that's where this started, and then she kept pursuing this concept of helping these young families that need things and don't have them, particularly the family unit, which is where it led. And that's the idea that we're at now, is creating a family unit where one did not exist, and watching this flower bloom, it's blooming right now, and you're going to hear exactly how it works. So it's been a great honor and privilege for me to be part of this, and to watch Jessica go on this journey and create this thing that is changing so many lives. And thanks to Aspen, we're going to hopefully make it even bigger. So to really hear the story, please welcome my wonderful wife, Jessica Seinfeld.
Oh, thank you all for choosing to put us on your schedule this morning. There's a lot of amazing things happening here, so I'm honored to have your attention on what I think is a really critical matter in this country. Thank you to our upcoming panel, who because we're all here and you got to see the video, I'm gonna cut my speech a little short so we can have more time for people who are really working with fathers every single day, and Daniel, who's one of our star fathers who's living a nightmare right now. So, excuse me. Can I have some water? Sorry. Anyway, so I started this organization in 2001, like Jerry said. Thank you so much. We had just had a baby, and we had recently been married, and for the first time in my life, I was without financial stress. And it was so miraculous to me that I felt like I wanted to take that space in my brain and help other people who were in dire straits and extreme financial stress. It wasn't a thing I was aware of, but it's just what I felt compelled to do. And so I started with the idea of just doing a drive to collect things for families in need. And just a quick thing. And a simple call to action meant we, in weeks' time, had a warehouse full of stuff and volunteers ready to deploy it. And what I wanted to do is, I was so excited to give everything away because I thought that was going to be the real moment. And when we invited a group of women at a domestic violence shelter that I'd volunteered with to come in, there was such an unexpected and even scary moment there where I realized, without going into detail, that people need to feel like they've accomplished something, that they've invested in themselves to receive goods, to receive something from somebody, especially if they've lived a life of poverty and where they have no trust in anyone around them. Giving away things was not the role for me. But when stuff kept pouring in and there was so much energy around this idea of helping families and creating a pipeline between people who had it and people who didn't in New York, I had to keep going. But what I knew I had to do was turn this into something that was going to incentivize parents and help them invest in themselves and get their GEDs and go to vocational training and job training and take parenting classes and get some financial literacy and learn how to be in a healthy relationship and communicate and all the things that when you grow up in poverty and you grow up without role models in a stable environment, you don't have. And so we partnered with the best organizations in New York, I mean, really the best. And we gave our stuff to parents, and our program started seeing their attendance grow. And people would choose those organizations because they knew if they were going to invest their time in a parenting class, they were going to leave with diapers and a stroller and cribs at the end. And those are things that they don't have to then sacrifice to put food on the table. So that model really worked. And so I kept looking at our success, and it was wonderful, and I should have been so happy and relieved to have started something and had so much support around it. But I felt like something was missing, and I felt like we weren't doing something right. And I always, Alan Michael, my colleague who's here today with me, knows that I'm an efficiency junkie. And so I just knew from all these single mothers that we were helping day in and day out, as I said in the video, around 63%, year after year after year, that number would never change. And it just drove me crazy because our moms would show up with men. These are the lucky ones and the good ones in our programs who had even just an able body near them. But they would never come in, and they would stand in the lobby or they would wait in the waiting rooms. And it was fascinating to us to ask social workers or any of the healthcare providers, why did the man wait outside? It never dawned on them to invite them in. And then men would be sitting in these waiting rooms and they would see posters of a woman and a child. And it was just started to really click for me. And then we would talk to our at-home nurses who would go into the homes of some of our moms, and we would say, what was Dad doing? And he was always on the periphery. And I found that really fascinating. And so then when we asked these programs, what are you doing to engage them? The best of the best said nothing. That's not our job. And I guess I can understand that, which is you're dealing with a relationship, a broken relationship. And when you are a social worker and you have a caseload of countless people and you want to just get home and feed your own kids and your salary isn't much higher than some of the families in our program, how are you going to go out and try to fix this relationship? So that I can see as a barrier for us. One we're not comfortable with, but it exists. And so we learned there about really bias and judgment against men, fathers specifically. I have a friend who runs a parenting center at a major hospital in New York City, and she says, we assume men will show up on the day that the baby's born and we'll never see him again. That's all of everyone in all of our nurses, all of our trainers, that's what they assume. And I just realized we have such an opportunity here to change this dynamic and include fathers. And so we kept hearing the word deadbeat, and we kept hearing this word, and it's just really slapped onto every guy who has ever stumbled or failed. And that fascinated me as well, because that can't be true. It can't be true that 40% of the single mothers, or let's say if we're working with, 100 women, and 60 of them are single. Are you saying that all of those fathers don't care about their children, or they're indifferent towards their children? There had to be something else. And so we started to get into it, and we started to look around and look for programs, like who's engaging dads? They must know the answer. And we looked exhaustively, and we found, I think, 3 programs. Joe Jones is one of them. He's our king. And a program that our dad Daniel works with called Strive. Reggie. This is tame so far. I have to watch these guys. But anyway, so it hasn't started yet. This is the boring part. But so there's no way that could be true. All of these men are not indifferent to their children. They are just scared. They have never grown up with a father. They have only experience violence, trauma, assault in every way. And they've never seen a healthy relationship or a role model in their lives, not to mention the structural barriers in this country that exist, and the bias, and just the countless obstacles that they have to hurdle themselves over and against all day, every day. At this convening, I think it wasn't the November one, but the last one of our behavior scientists said, to know what it's like to experience real poverty, try to go about your day memorizing 7 numbers all day long. That is mind-blowing to me, that any of these parents can get through their days, and let alone raise their kids well, get along with the people that they are living with, and have a functioning relationship with the person that they're co-parenting with. And so we couldn't find any programs, and so we said, we're gonna do this. And so in 2010, we just committed to dads. We just said, we have to do this. It can't be that we are wasting this vital resource in this country of men, where there's no economic mobility upwards for either single mothers or men who have failed. And so we just went for it, and we started to support the fatherhood programs that existed. And we would be going along, and it would be amazing, and we'd have this incredible leader, and we was just like, oh, this is so important, this is happening. And then, boom, they'd lose their funding. That leader would go off and get another job in a totally different sector. And that was another barrier for us. Where are we gonna find these amazing leaders in the community? Because our dads wanna connect with people who look like them and stand at the front of the class and understand what their lives are like. And so it was frustrating, and it was hard, and it was much more difficult than giving things away, but the rewards were so mind-blowing to me that we were the ones doing this. Like, why am I doing this? This was going to be a weekend drive, and here I am 18 years later, the one who's doing it. And yesterday when Jerry and I are walking around campus, everyone's like, oh, Jerry, what are you speaking about? And it's like, right, exactly. But it is such an honor to be carrying this mantle on behalf of men, which is so counterintuitive in this country, especially right now, that we need to fight for men, because this is a vast resource, and it's a necessary one. It's necessary to help mothers. It's necessary to give children a sense of family and love and dignity, and to give them the opportunity to have a father like their own father didn't have. And so what Good Plus is doing now is that we have made it a mandate that every fatherhood program, or every children's and mothers program that we support, because there are millions in this country that support women and children, but so few that support men, they all have to receive support from us, they have to engage men. And that was a big shift for us. We're also doing, I hired, let's say a year and a half ago, I hired the best in the business, Dr. Alan Michael Graves, who you saw in the video, and he's running trainings about bias and about how we can dismantle this idea that men are deadbeats and not worth trying for, and helping us speak better to the families that we work with and the fathers that we work with by asking them, instead of like, what's wrong with you? It's asking them, like, tell me what happened to you, because their stories explain their behavior. And if we help them with their stories, their lives will change. And so, I'm very obsessed with the concept of trauma in this country, and how we're not addressing it at the social service level. And that's one of the things that I think is another barrier for us, which is holding people back from their potential, which is not being able to address what happened to them as children and along the way. And how is all of these great programs, how is it gonna sink in if we don't address at a very soul and cellular level what happened to these men. And I think we would see really great change, and that's something we're also working on. But what we're really, really excited about is our child support reform, which has been, because of our partnership with Ascend, we have formed this unbelievable working group, and these guys are all part of it, and who you'll meet and are far more interesting than me. But we are going to deal with these ridiculous, outdated laws in this country that are designed to keep men down and designed to keep dad away from his family. And Daniel will allude to his story, whatever you're comfortable with, obviously. But we have to change child support in this country, and we're working on it every day. So I think I went over my time. But it's okay. It's an important cultural moment for fatherhood. Yes. You can see it in all these athletes like Steph Curry and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. They are culturally, we're so much further ahead, and Gillette has been quite controversially wonderful in stepping out in front of men. And it's really an opportunity now for us to seize this moment and invest in men. And I'm with the right people to do it, and I'm very lucky and grateful. Thank you. And thank you to Jerry for opening for me. Can I just spill my water? Reggie, you're gonna be our moderator. Reggie is an Ascend Fellow. He has dedicated his life to child welfare. His first role was as a child abuse investigator in Wisconsin, and he's for 7 years held the position of Executive Director of Human Services for the state of Colorado with distinction. He is such an innovator and one of the most respected people in this sector, I have to say. We hear his name everywhere as a real innovator in Colorado because of what you've done in Colorado. You guys are a real hallmark state, as is Ohio. So let me introduce Reggie, and thank you for taking over.
Happy to be here. Good morning. Good morning. First of all, thank you to Jerry and Jessica for their leadership, their commitment on this really vital issue for every child, every family in our country, and really the future of our country, I think. We're fortunate that you all have taken this mantle. And to the Aspen Institute that also has recognized the importance of fatherhood, both of being a father and of supporting fathers in American families, is incredibly vital. I know that because I am a dad. I have 3 kids too many, and I distinctly remember standing in the delivery room when my wife was giving birth to our first child, Mackenzie, holding her leg. I had one leg, the nurse had the other leg, as she was delivering our first child. And then when the nurse took the baby and put that baby in my hands, I knew in that moment that my role in the life of that child and my 2 other kids who came afterwards was incredibly important, a strong responsibility that I had to be involved in their lives actively. And if you don't believe any of us dads who are engaged in real ways in the lives of our kids, then look at the research. The research is abundantly clear that when kids are engaged with both parents, even if those parents don't live in the same household, those children do better on just about any measure you can imagine. Less likely to experience child abuse and neglect, more likely to be ready for kindergarten, less likely to be involved in the criminal justice system either as juveniles or as adults, less likely to have mental health or substance abuse issues, more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to go on to college. The list goes on and on of the benefits of kids who are engaged and connected to both parents. And yet, in the United States of America, if you are low income, if you are a child who is growing up in a low-income family in our country, the system is designed to treat both of those households completely differently. Mom in most cases, and when we use mom and dad today, we're talking generalities. I mean, the percentages are like 90-10 of people involved in the child support system who owe that are dads versus moms. So we'll speak very broadly about moms and dads in these particular roles. Mom in the United States, if you are very low income and you have a child at least 51% of the time, you can qualify for a program called TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program, and you will get cash assistance. It might differ in which state you're in, how much you'll receive, but you'll get cash assistance. You might get food assistance or SNAP for you and your child. You could get housing supports. You'd be eligible for medical assistance. You would get employment services to help you to get a job, maybe even education supports to help you to get the skills necessary to get a job. If you are the father in that exact same family situation, families separated, divorced, not together, and you have the child 49% of the time or less, you receive none of those benefits. Maybe with the Affordable Care Act, you could get Medicaid in some states now. Otherwise, you'd receive none. As a matter of fact, you only would not receive nothing. You would be responsible to owe the little bit that you have. Remember, you too are living in extreme poverty. Owe that to the other family. And on top of it, the government's going to take a cut off the top of what you pay to reimburse the government. This is a system that is not designed to promote families, both parents being together. We can do better. And we're really excited, I'm excited to introduce you to members of our panel today who have some great ideas and initiatives about how we can do better. First of all, to my immediate right is the king, apparently.
Apparently.
No, I'm never going to live that down.
No, you ain't. And did we all get titles, Jessica, or just Joe? You haven't given me mine yet. Yeah. All right. Joe Jones also is an Ascend Fellow.
Current member.
Right, current member. I was in the first class of fellows, still the best class. Joe is in the third class of fellows.
Very best class.
Last class. And Joe is from Baltimore, Maryland, and runs a...
Yay, be more. Yeah.
Behave, Joe. and runs a really important program for fatherhood that is taking this notion of what I just described about how the system in the United States works for poor families and is turning it on its head. Joe, what are you doing that's different in Baltimore?
Yeah, thanks, Reg. And first of all, thank you all for, as was mentioned, thank you all for dedicating part of your time here at the Ideas Festival to this session. And to both Jerry and Jessica, it's not lost on me that your voice and your celebrity, Jessica, your passion when you talk about this, how incredibly important it is to this effort, to this field, and for us to change the hearts and minds of people who don't necessarily know how important this is. I remember attending a very networked event in DC years ago, and people were, introducing themselves. I went to this university. This is my profession. They asked me what I did, and I said, I am a fatherhood practitioner. And the woman said, that's cute. and I said, yeah, it's cute, but it's also essential. And so we have tried to change the narrative around what it means to be a dad, particularly for low-income dads. And relative to your question, Reg, is for us in Baltimore, Baltimore is it's a challenged city, but it has so many assets, including its people, which includes the dads who have responsibility for raising children. So what we do is we bring dads in to the center, and we get them where they are without being judgmental. And we attempt to identify the challenges they face with respect to their roles as parents, as caregivers, and as financial contributors. And it is a tale that is heart-wrenching when you see that most of these guys come in earning less than $10,000 if they have a job, and most do not. but they're responsible for raising children. So we work with them around helping them to understand parenting from a male perspective. It's a little different from women, but the two roles are complementary if they're done, if they're done right. Also to help him manage the relationship with the child's mother, to nurture it if they're together, and to manage it if the relationship is disintegrated, so that the child has the benefit of having access to both parents. Then to deal with this issue of child support, and I'll give you one data point just on child support in Baltimore relative to the communities where we are. And 3 contiguous zip codes, there are 4,000 low-income non-custodial parents, the majority of whom are men, who owe an aggregate, it's 4,000 men in these 3 zip codes, 4,000 who owe an aggregate of $26 million in state-owed child support. Meaning money that's not going to the family is going directly back to the state. These are also 3 of the top zip codes that people released from incarceration come back to. So that gives you some sense of the geography and the demographics. But more important than anything else is that these men care deeply about wanting to be dads. And they are not deadbeat, they're dead broke, right? And so we try to identify partners. In this instance, and what I'll leave you with is our partnership with Good Plus. And so given that the fact that these guys are dead broke and that they care, they often don't have the financial resources to do anything for their children. And so we really want them to understand how important it is just to spend time with your child. But you know how hard it is to be a man in our society and not have resources to care for your children? It makes you feel less than, right? And so what Good Plus has done, as you heard from Jessica, is that they've made goods and services available. So for us in Baltimore, what does that look like? So we take groups of men. We receive resources from the Good Plus Foundation in the form of these gift cards, and the gift cards can only be spent on the needs of the children. So last Christmas, we took a group of dads and their children to a children's clothing store called the Children's Place at Arundel Mills Mall in Maryland. And these guys have the gift cards, and when they go into the store, our corporate partner, the Children's Place, they're set up to engage the dads. So they make a big deal of these dads being there with their kids, and the kids don't know this is going on, right? And so when the children pick out the clothing, including school uniforms, and you all know how costly it is to purchase a school uniform, right? These dads can purchase these items. The children see the dads purchasing the item. Keep in mind this was Christmas, right? The looks on the faces of the children, the hearts of the fathers who were changed to help them realize the value, right? And then the other side of this is what I'll leave you with, right? For the expectant dads who are in the program, right, they also are dead broke. They don't have the value of being able to go out and buy things for their children, including strollers, right? Now, I tease Jessica about this all the time. We get these strollers from them. Right? These strollers are like BMWs, right? I wish I had a stroller like that when I was first parenting, right? And these dads, for their participation in the program, they get the stroller and they're able to go back home, right? Particularly to the mom and to the mom's family. And they see that this guy is in a position to care for their child much differently than he was ever in a position to do. That's the value of having a partnership like Good Plus. That's the value of having a good corporate partner like the Children's Place. And it's the value of me being an Aspen fellow, which gives me access to expertise and relationships to be able to advance this cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Jessica mentioned a number of times in her presentation this notion of the deadbeat dad. And back in the 1990s, the Clinton administration and the Republican-led Congress at the time reformed child support in our country, and they sold it on this notion of the deadbeat dad, the dad who's got money with the fancy house and the nice car and isn't paying his child support. And there are those dads in the system, but what if you are a dad who has no job, who has no employment skills? Maybe you just are getting out of prison or jail yourself. You have your own mental health issues or substance abuse issues. You're homeless and have no place to live. And if you do get a job, it's probably at minimum wage. You're lucky if you're working 20 to 30 hours a week, and then the government takes some of that money away to pay off your child support, to pay for your child, and you literally have no resources available to help you to stabilize your own life, much less position yourself to take care of your children. That's the system that we've created. It was sold on this concept of a deadbeat dad, but it seems to me that we designed a system that was going to beat the dads dead. Daniel, the next gentleman on our panel, has lived this system and continues to live it. He lives in New York City and has had...
real king.
He is a real king. I was hoping to be the best looking guy on the panel today, and I'm like, I know I got Jones beat, but I didn't, and then Daniel came up here. Anyway, I digress. Daniel has two sons with two different moms.
Yes.
Right? One of your sons who has autism, right?
Correct.
Lives with you.
Yes.
And you are currently parenting him and your dad.
Correct.
Right? You all live together.
3 generations.
You have another child who's living in a different city, and that court doesn't allow you to be engaged with that child.
That's correct.
How can that possibly happen, Daniel? Tell us about that.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's Daniel, super dad. So, everything that you said about the barriers, about being incarcerated, not having a dad around and falling into drugs and not having a role model. I didn't have a role model growing up. And I fell into all those traps, incarceration, drug addiction. And it wasn't until I found out that one of my son's moms was pregnant. She said, hey, I'm pregnant. When the baby was born, she just threw the boy at me. And she just left. And I'm getting out of jail. I'm still a recovering addict. I'm homeless. So I was in a drug program, and I was allowed visitation. I had a friend who took custody of my son until I got out the program. It was a 3-month program because of a drug habit. Mm-hmm. So she held me down while he was in there. So when I got out, I had no resources. Like, how I'm going to do this? My mom never gave up on me. She was a single mother. So I had to step up to the plate. There was a lot of barriers. First, I had to get custody. Where's the mom at? From there, I had put her on child support. And I kind of moved out of the state. This was in Philadelphia. So being in New York City, I went with my sister's house. She had a little studio room. It was just too small for all of us. And she was a corrections officer in upstate New York. And she said, Daniel, I can't do this. You're going to have to go in the shelter. Maybe they can help you there. So I ended up being in the shelter system 5 years because of my son was diagnosed with autism, and he had a lot of therapy. I couldn't get a job because I had to be home unattended. It was ABA therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and it was at different times of day. And some therapists didn't want to travel half hour, 2 half-hour sessions, and then travel another hour. I had to be home at 3 o'clock to get the bus. There was no special needs childcare at the time. Every time I go to welfare, hey, where's the mom? So I got tired of explaining, hey, dad's got to step up. I'm here. Doing these events. Well, let me tell you how I got to these events. Well, I got tired of being broke, but I knew I wanted better for my son. Autistic. I wanted my son to be normal. I wanted him to play in the playground with other kids. I didn't want, everywhere I go, I just, hey, my son's autistic. I feel some type of way, but I'm a proud parent. But I want everybody to know, hey, awareness, so y'all can know. So I started working with the therapist, started engaging with them, seeing how the autism spectrum runs, so I could have a better understanding. And I found a flyer one day saying if you're homeless, you have no GED, if you want to work, if you want any training, and then I qualified. The place was called Strive. It's in Harlem, New York. I went in there, they helped me. I got my OSHA. From there, I got my scaffolding. They helped me out with transportation. They gave me stipends every time I went, every week. It was helping me out. And eventually, I graduated from the program. I received some certificates, and I went to a fatherhood program. And there, they taught me how to communicate better, how to be a better father, how to eat healthy. Because my son's autistic and he's very picky, and he's sensitive to certain foods. And I needed to know, hey, what can I do? The neurologist didn't know what to do. But Strive, they had a little program, fatherhood program, once a week that would have a nutrition class, and they would show you what to do. And from there on, I kind of picked up when I was better at making meals. Also, they had a day where you could come and get your haircut with your son and engage with that. When you needed supplies, which I really needed at the time, they was able to provide for me, for me. And eventually I got a job. When I got a job, it still was hard for childcare. Not everyone was certified or qualified to attend to a special needs child, even though my son doesn't have tantrums, he's well behaved, I teach him good. But that was a barrier, so I had to have a part-time job. And I couldn't work so many hours because of Social Security. My son received Social Security. And if I worked a certain amount of hours, then they would reduce his check, and I needed that because I live in low-income housing. So I'm going through all this struggle. My son's mother in Philadelphia think that I'm a star because I'm up here and I'm trying to fight for the fathers. So she went back to the courts, and I got a subpoena saying I need to go back to Philadelphia. So I'm going. This is my movement. This is why I'm here. If this is an obstacle, then let's go. So I go. They threw $13,000 arrears on me, and I have to pay $480 a month. I don't work full-time. I live in low-income housing. I'm taking care of my father, who's a senior, and he's a victim of Hurricane Maria. And I don't think they see this. They just see the net, what you make, and it's the net, not the gross. So I'm not going to be working September 1st. I was a contractor for Oppenheimer Funds. They sold it to Invesco. So the transfer of September 1st, I'm not going to have a job. So right now, I'm like, hey, I don't want to go to jail. I'm taking care of my father and my son. Mm-hmm. How do I go around this? I don't want to go back to jail. Mm-hmm. I went to jail one time for not paying child support, and I was paying child support. And on top of this, I'm not on the birth certificate. So how am I even getting thrown arrears, And it's not me trying to blame things, but it's kind of frustrating. These are things that people need to see. And I, as a father, I have the mental stability because I'm going to fight for my son and for all children. I don't want no other kids going through this. I grew up without a father. I have my father now, and now I'm very happy that he's around, and now he can see his grandchild. But I don't want to see no other kid go through what I went through as a child,
Absolutely. Daniel, thank you. Thank you for telling the story. So we only have about 5-6 minutes left, but Daniel says he gets a subpoena out of the blue to go to court for child support for his son, and the court says you're the dad, and we're going to backdate to $13,000, even though we had never told you you had a responsibility to pay child support. Now all of a sudden you inherited a debt of $13,000. Is that right?
Correct. When the child was born, the mother didn't put me on the birth certificate because she was afraid to lose the cash assistance from welfare. Mm-hmm. She didn't tell me that. So, the relationship didn't work out, but I was working, and I want to provide for my son because I'm a father. We went to a court hearing, we did some modification, and I had to pay. They said I had to pay weekly. I got to send this to Harrisburg, and then she'll get some money. I was never on the birth certificate in the first place, so why was I sitting there? So, but I was young, I was naive. I didn't want to go back to jail.
Yeah.
I had to go by it. I was 21 years old. So now, when I get my life together and I have another child and I'm trying to fight back because I want both these two boys together, these arrears is thrown on me. But you know what? I'm here to fight for dads.
Thank you, Daniel. Kim is from Ohio. And have you ever heard the saying, I'm from the state and I'm here to help? Kim is here for that. So Kim, we just heard Daniel's story. I told you some things about child support and low-income families in the United States. What's up?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, first of all, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble up here, but I am the queen, correct? She called me queen earlier. I just wanted to just put that out there. So these two gentlemen, yeah. So again, I'm with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, but more importantly, I'm executive director of the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. And what Mr. Jones and Mr. Torres spoke on is exactly why in Ohio we have this state structure of supporting fathers. Because with the boots on the ground of fatherhood programs and the feet on the street, assisting low-income fathers, we need to make sure that policy makes sense policy, right? That the policies and the procedures of the county programs are being father-friendly and father-inclusive. I think that Jessica had mentioned earlier that when you walk into their facility, you need to see pictures of families. You need to see fathers with their children as well. So my prior government life, I worked in child support, so I absolutely understand what Daniel was saying. I worked in the local county child support agency and then moved to the state and started to make some changes. And so in Ohio, because we have this fatherhood commission of 20 commissioners that meet to talk about these types of issues in all of the different state departments. I have 6 General Assembly members on the commission, as well as a designee from the governor's office and from the Ohio Supreme Court. And so this child support issue that Daniel spoke on is real. There are so many rules and sometimes from the federal office of child support, they sort of trickle down, but then a lot of times states have the discretion to do certain things as well, like waive arrears. So in Ohio, we do have a rule, not every state does, where you can actually forgive some of that debt owed to the state if you're paying current support and if you're in maybe a fatherhood program. It's very important for states to realize that there are TANF dollars that go unspent. And so from the federal level, there is this message for states to really take a look at their TANF, their temporary assistance to needy families, dollars that are not being spent to actually work with low-income fathers. So in my budget, so I have $2.2 million a year. The state budget passed in Ohio, giving me an additional $1.2 million. So I have $2.2 million a year to work with low-income fathers. So in child support, we recognize the fact that there are low-income fathers who pay child support. So now the child support rules have changed in Ohio, working with the State Office of Child Support and our legislators to say, hey, before we even talk about a monetary amount for the father to pay for his child, there should be this safety net of funds so that he can have basic life needs, right? So he can have shelter, food, clothing. So now the child support rules state that when we run guidelines for low-income fathers, this is self-sufficiency reserve that's set aside for that non-custodial parent before we even start to talk about the funds. Yes?
Can I interrupt because
Sure.
we got less than a minute left.
Yes.
And I'm curious, this is something unique to Ohio.
Yes.
Not done in many other places across the country. Why and what can states do? Very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. So why? We've been in statute since 1999. Actually, it was one of our state legislators that decided that we needed a fatherhood commission because of the issues in child support, because of the high debt that went unpaid, and because of the issues that came out of the child support program. For states, what I would do, and this is something that we've been talking about with several other states, is to contact your TANF offices, find out how much money is not being spent that goes back, and to find out, how they can support programs like Joe's to help low-income fathers to, be more active in their children's lives, and just to feel good about being a father.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kim. The system doesn't have to be this way. We built this system in the United States based on a false premise of who really needs this system of child support. And we know for too many families like Daniel's, it simply keeps dads down, it keeps moms down, and it prevents kids from developing the skills and relationships they need to overcome poverty and live better lives. We can change this system that is flawed in its design in the United States, but we need Congress to act. It's going to take some congressional change to recognize this issue and to lead a movement to reform our laws so that we can have more initiatives like we're hearing about in the state of Ohio and in Baltimore and some of the pilots that we've created in Colorado. It can change, it will change, especially with great leadership like Jessica Seinfeld and the guy she lives with. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you to this outstanding panel for sharing the stories.